The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, the group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, and so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Maunaloa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed, and we knew we were getting to the local community, and people were asking questions. So those were the best. I think I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well, and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont from the nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. Today is Thursday, September 26th, 2024. Kilauea's eruption at Nāpau Crater, which we were still covering last week, has ended after 5 days. And so we will update you guys on the aftermath here as we enter the recharge phase of this this part of Kilauea's story. How's it going today, Dane? How have you been for the last week?
Oh, doing good. Kind of entered our own recharge phase after all the busyness that we had going last week. So this week, yeah, we got a little review of the eruption and go through the progression of it, and yeah, kind of a wind down from the whole thing. So yeah, doing pretty good. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Dane. Yeah, I'm going to be leading discussion, collecting questions on chat, which we'll address. We'll just we'll just do the last little bit of the eruption that we didn't cover last week, and then go into what's happening now. And
Yeah,
if we end a little early, then we'll be blessed. All right. So let's get into our Hawaiian volcano summary. We can get our screen turned around. All right. Aloha, everyone. This is our Hawaiian volcano summary for September 26th, 2024. Kilauea's eruption at Nāpau Crater on the East Rift has ended after 5 days, leaving a pad of cooling lava in the crater floor and above this western part of the crater rim over here. The monitoring signals have quieted down substantially. These are the earthquakes over the last week, colored by depth. And so there are some earthquakes following in the area of the eruption, as well as some on the south flank that accommodate that continued adjustment underground within the rift, the south flank moving out of the way whenever it can, and also some continued earthquakes right around the summit area as it also is recharging there. We have our typical Pahala earthquakes from depth coming in, the deeper cluster over here, but also a closer by cluster and a typical deep root path to Kilauea. So the volcano does appear to be recharging with magma still, and we'll see that in another place here shortly. Earthquake rates have dropped substantially. Earthquakes per day here is a peak as we had our eruption begin last week. And it ended on the 20th, was the last day the lava was seen coming out of the ground. And since then, we've had very few earthquakes per day relative to what we had on the buildup and during the event itself. So it really is a recharge phase now. The sandhill tilt meter, which shows us both a component from the direction of the caldera at Halemau'uma'u and one of the south caldera, does appear to have also slowed its draining. This particular tilt plot was updated yesterday, so it's not exactly current, but today's report suggests that there is no deflation or inflation ongoing on this south in the sandhill tilt meter site. But if we go to the Uikahuna site and the main caldera, we do see that there is a little bit of inflation, in fact, since the 20th, as presumably the magma that's still coming into the volcano is recharging in the summit area. Further down at the escape road tilt meter by Mauna Ulu, the previous pattern has resumed, so it seems like it's pretty quiet there and stable. And that's also the case all the way at the Pu'o'o crater tilt meter, where this green component is the one that, pointing to the west, has suggested first the draining of the underground pressure as eruption was being fed, and then a recharge of that area that began to slow and seems to have leveled off at the time of our update today. So that's the story in Kilauea. The signals seem pretty steady, and we'll have to wait to see how long the recharge phase takes until the signals change and what comes next. On Maunaloa, it continues to be quiet. Earthquakes have been very low over the last week. There's only one deep event to speak of and very few overall, such that the earthquake rates for the past 5 years are still at their lowest point anytime in the last 5 years. And that's our Hawaiian volcano summary for this week. And with that, we'll roll into our volcanic hazard summary, since the volcanic gas has been our main concern with this eruption. And the short of it is that there's a lot less gas coming up from the volcano today. The summit emission site of 60 tons per day continues to produce gas, but it's blowing mostly away from the areas people habitate. The other site by the Middle East Rift was reported by the USGS to have no emissions measured when they were trying to measure them coming across the Chain of Craters Road here earlier this week. So we know from the webcams and imagery there is still a little bit of gas coming out, but it's no longer being detected by the instruments. If we look at the charts for the area, it looks like there's one anomalous reading at the Volcano Art Center that occurred yesterday. So it's likely something localized. Maybe someone was doing some yard work nearby there or something. So we're not seeing it anywhere else in the area. So that's why it's a little suspicious there. Everything's in the green elsewhere in the park. We also like to check in on the VMAP, Vog Measurement and Prediction Project forecast from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And here is the forecast for today with a very low emission rate of around 60 tons per day coming from the summit. That barely registers any VOG concentrations on a map at all. So it looks like the air is clearer than it has been in some time. And just to follow up on what we saw last week on our purple air map, we'll load it up again this week and just show how we're greens all the way around, apart from the one trouble site in Kona that always shows high. So looking good, gas-wise. Very little hazard following the eruption. It's the best time. So we'll move on to our visuals. And to start off, we'll replay you this time lapse from the S2 camera the USGS has set up. This is the one that faces into Nāpau Crater from the east. So the lower fissures are visible right here when I set this camera up just after the start of the eruption. The upper fissures are back over here, and this is the one we saw the lava coming over this cliff and this big lava fall in our close-ups last week. So I'll play it from this wide angle to start here. And just so you can see that full sequence from when it erupted for those first 4 days on this camera field of view. There is the lava falls. And since then is what we're really trying to see, the eruption glowing and fuming and glowing a little bit less and fuming a little bit less and so on. A couple of spots still visible there on that ramp down to the crater floor. And not as much gas visible from this distance in the webcam in the more recent days here. A little bit there at the end when the weather changes and it gets a little cooler and a little more moist, you can see some of that gas still coming up there. So that's the view we have. I can maybe play it one more time and let me zoom it in to here so you could get a little better view of that. Lava falls coming over. All the gas, a lot more gas coming out during eruption, especially above the crater wall there in the background. And it's diminishing quite a bit here. A little bit of glow right there. You can see that spot's right along that ramp on the crater wall right there. It's the most persistent spot of glow. Yeah, so that's the visible record from the S2 camera. None of the other cameras really show anything that spectacular, so you can see glow in several of the frames, but there's really nothing as good as this. So we'll just keep it moving from here and show you guys the last couple of videos USGS released of that last day and 24 hours of eruption, we'll call it, the evening before and then the morning of that came afterwards here. So starting off, here is a aerial view from the 19th, where we still have that reactivated fissure here in the bottom right, feeding that big river of lava over the cliff onto the crater floor. And we still see the fume there at the far side of the crater, and a little bit here at this margin where there's still lava flows leaking onto some brush growing in a tephra, that margin of the crater. So this is a view we saw last week, just to pull us back into where we were and pick up the story where we left off. There's still some lava oozing in this image right down in this area right here as well, a little more sluggishly. And you can see some right along this margin right here as well, advancing. So one thing to note is right here you see where the lavas flowed down and over from the Komomo eruption. This was 2011. And relative to that, in this particular image, you can see that the flow has not quite reached that. And so later, by the next morning, we'll see the flow has continued to advance and will abut right below that flow from Kīlauea as well. But last glory views of the eruption here, the big falls, the big fissure as it was winding down, just before it was winding down here. Different passenger view, different camera, but same day, same story. There's that fissure from above, building ramparts, feeding that big river of lava that there it is pouring down and over the cliff and releasing gas. It's nice to note that gas release when a flow goes over the cliff there and is exposed. So here's another video from, and this is what it looks like in real time. So there's a lot of this. So what I'll do is just kind of just speed it up here. You can see a little bit more of that central channel and some of the overflow margins moving along there. A pretty interesting perspective of the eruption there. And we have some other images that were released as well. So some static ones. Here, this is that last western fissure spattering. I think I might have got one of the wrong videos, perhaps. Huh? Let's see. Let's see if I can get this one to go here. Let's pull it back. Oh, it seems to be getting stuck here. So I'll check on the videos here in a second. We'll go through these images. And there's that view of that western fissure from the ground. And again, this is that last day of eruption on the 20th. Those lava flows on that margin of Nāpau Crater still advancing across that older tephra that's on the ground that landed there from the Pu'u'u eruption era, covering those last flows of the 1960s on most of the crater floor. A little bit further back view of that. Some brush growing in the foreground. That's where that little bit of smoke is coming from, is this vegetation burning as these pohoihoi lobes advance. And there a view across. There's that margin coming across here, but the back wall where the falls had come across. The fume coming out. No active lava currently exposed in this view the next morning, the 20th. They do see glow in the cracks as such here as they're walking around on that inflating flow field. So it's interesting to note that's similar to what you'd see down on the Kalapana flow field down below the Pali. And the views from above. So I'm still seeing a little bit of spattering from this western fissure above the crater wall around 8:30 a.m. on the 20th there. Noting the growth of other ground cracks in the area, as you can see here. And there, more of there's that minor spattering. So we saw that last video and images of this thing really fissuring, fountaining quite high, and here it's quite a bit less. Small flows, maybe getting about this far, as you can tell in here. There it is again, much smaller eruption source. Venting still there, but not nearly as high. And then the final inactive cooling lava map here. So yeah, that's the observations we have here. Maybe I'll try those that video up again. Make sure it's not the same one I just played here, but I feel like there was another one here that we saw. Yeah, let's try it. No, it doesn't want to go on that one.
Never when we're live, you know?
Yeah. Let's see here. I had that one somewhere, but I don't seem to have it where I can find it this exact instant. So, but let's see. What this video is going to show, if it actually plays and stops hanging up here, is you don't see lava falls exposed up here anymore. Right? There's no river of lava pouring all the way in quite as much. You still see fuming up in this area. You can see that the margin of lava flow here at the front has come closer. Right? Over here, there's a margin all the way to there. And here's a Maunaloa flow right there. So the previous video had actually only had us to here, somewhere here, and by this next morning, it's advanced all the way around to wrap down here. So let's see. Let me try a hack here real quick. Let's see if I can get something to work. Here, let's see. Well, maybe I'll come back to this. I won't do my hack live here. So I'll just come back to the S2 camera and just check into it. What's going on here? It's still hot, still fuming. Nothing really glowing up there on that far corner rim. All right, so moving on from the visuals, apart from the one video I'm missing that I'll come back to the earthquakes. Let's look at our earthquake data for the last 2 days here compared to our eruption site. Not a whole lot. And if I put it back the last 2 weeks, you'll catch the eruption as well. So you can see what a difference it is to what we have now. So looking at the other earthquake map just for the last 1 week now, and plotted not by time, but not by depth, but by time instead. So we're looking at the whole last 7 days. If I go to the last 1 day, there's hardly anything here either. But zooming in, you can see that hardly anything right around the eruption site there, and not much notable elsewhere as well. So we'll come back to our other map. Let's keep zooming out just so you can see the whole island here and the events that occurred, right? This is the most interesting one here, 3.2, 11 miles down beneath Mauna Kea, which is inactive. And so it's just one of these settling events down there, a cooling magma chamber. So that's the earthquakes this week. We'll roll through observations to earthquakes to our monitoring, which is also a little abridged, but we will start with our most recent HVO daily update from this morning. And they note that eruption has ended. Only a few spots of glow remain. Weak steaming at the vents continues. And the geophysical signatures, this is what I call that monitoring signals, of the eruption have all returned to background. The USGS lowered the aviation and alert levels from watch orange to advisory yellow on Monday, 3 days following the end of the eruption, once all the signals had quieted down a little bit further. And since then, no changes elsewhere, like the Lower East Rift or the Southwest Rift as well. Highlighting some other indications here. No SO2 from the eruption site was detected on Monday, September 23rd, during measurements on the Chain of Craters Road, indicating that the Middle East Rift Zone emissions are approaching or at 0 tons per day. Right. We clearly can see there's still a little bit of gas coming out, but yeah, that's and then the video shows that a little bit as well. The video I'm missing shows that a little bit as well, but it can be measured with the instruments that we have. Earthquakes are low. No more tremor on seismometers close to eruption site. Tilt meters show no shallow deformation. NGPS show a major decrease or end of inflation below Maunaloa and Nāpau Crater. That's really it. They recap that there were 4 phases of the eruption, but that everything is basically over now. In summary, we don't have a volume yet. We do have a total area of around 156 acres. That's about 630,000 square meters. Most of that's within Nāpau Crater, but some amount of it's outside of the crater on that upper wall as well, on the west side. They do estimate the eruption rates at about 5 to 15 cubic meters per second. So that's a decent rate, but not nearly what we saw in 2018 or in Maunaloa. This is closer to the long-term average of what we see at pool eruption rates. So that is basically it. We have to wait and see what happens next. The signals are kind of quiet. The volcano moves in at its own pace, especially in these recharge phases. So we have nothing to do except wait further and see what happens next. So that's the text version. We have been going through these maps, right? The original map of where the fissures were, followed by the next one that showed a little bit of expansion of the fissures going down in the crater. And then the next one that showed the reactivation of the upper fissure and flowing down into the crater. And that was as far as we had gotten by our update last week, because it had taken some time for that other map to populate to the website. And we do have that now, and here's how it looks now. So you can see that there was a little extra flow from this upper fissure starting to flow off in the upper part of the flow field above the crater wall, but also filling in the crater and sweeping around to the southeast, a little bit to the north as well here. And so that's basically it. Although that's the most recently released map, this one right here from the 19th. But we know there was another morning to this eruption, as we saw from the video here. And if we run to the USGS preliminary map, we actually can note that they have updated the map to include a little point here, right, which clearly, if I rewind this, is not yet here. Right? If you look at the purple, that's where the Kilauea flow is. That's where the flow comes down in. So we're probably something like this now, if you had to guess, right? Which you can see here. So with that update, I updated my animation here. I'm going to show you guys what this looked like in map view as the fissures moved and progressed and filled in and eventually filled the crater floor. Starting up top, moving down to the crater floor, moving back up top, and then shutting down as a sequence that we had. So there you can see how it progressed. I'll let it go one last time. And there's how it looks now. What you might notice is there's a lot more material up here and up here from what you might have seen in the earlier sequences. So let's see if I can, this last iteration here, when we reactivated up top, really expanded quite a bit above the crater wall as well. So that's how our final footprint looks as such. Also notable is if you look at this westernmost fissure over here, it looks like it's more accurately mapped in the most recent versions. Whereas if we go further back in time, some of those look a little bit different as far as how they were mapped on the original products. So those are the visible maps. The thermal maps as well have been updated. So as we step through those once again, there's the two pads from the beginning, opening on a crater floor, flowing across the crater floor kind of sluggishly, opening above the crater wall, and then really pouring into the crater and filling it much more quickly. And finally, after it's all done, there's a little knob, and we have inactive fissures, hot and glowing, inactive cooling lava across the main crater floor. And in particular, we can see the last flow of the last active fissure right here. This is a small little pad. So that's the thermal maps from USGS. We do have a contribution from Cosme on X as well, using Copernicus and Sentinel images here. So for using both May and yesterday, the two before and after here. So you can see there the progression from the satellite as the landscape changes in about a week here on Kilauea's Middle East Rift. All right, we'll go on to our tilt. And here is our summit 2 days, showing just in the 2 days, fairly steady inflation. Not massive magnitude here, only 3 microradians, but it is inflating. If we look at the last week, you could say, oh, look, it's come up a whole bunch in the last week. But really, if you look more closely, we're around 2. And way over here, we actually start up above 2. We've had a big inflation cycle. And really, this inflation is still coming out of that for the long term here, right? It's not really deflation, inflation. It just kind of was the draining that accompanied the eruption. Before here, we have the reinflation, like whatever flow pathway is interrupted, and magma is backing up in the summit here once again. So it is reinflating since the eruption, but not a whole lot of net gain. Maybe is a better way to say it there since before. In a bigger picture, we were zoomed into really right in here, that little section right in here. So the main eruption draining was really all of this, with a small little hiatus and then a continuation. And then that's where it turned around, was just before the 20th there. Kilauea Iki is showing the same pattern, pretty steady since then. Sand Hill, as we've noted, some of these, or most of these tilt plots are not fully updated till today, but it's enough to see what the pattern actually is here. Sand Hill does appear to be maybe deflating still a little bit on the South Caldera component here, but certainly nowhere near as fast, if at all. And we're just picking at the beginning of inflation on the Hawaiʻi, so perhaps. Let's see here. Okay, I kind of want to know what word I use there, you guys. But anyways, I'll move on. The escape road looks pretty steady as well, as we pointed out before. Pu'o'o, a little more interesting in that it had been still climbing, reinflating a little bit, and that seems to have really flattened out in the last couple of days here. So that's really the most telling thing here. Further down the rift, no real effect at the Janaka station or beyond there. And so to integrate that with our earthquakes, here we have another tilt plot we haven't shown you guys. We've turned on the Pu'o'o tilt meter. This is saying POO, but I'm not sure it is. But we're having the daily signals here coming in. It's restored. So when we have that much variation in daily signal, what we're looking for is that kind of average. So I think of it as like an envelope. Where's the top of the envelope there? Right? Maybe it comes down a little bit. And then where's the bottom of the envelope? So it looks pretty steady, pretty flat, unchanging, not really mirroring the pattern that we see at the summit. And so that's the key thing here, and why we have these two signals in the same plot, is to see if the pressures at the summit are propagating all the way down and we have an open pathway to the Pu'o'o area. And so far, all that eruption site being uprift, there is still no connection down at Pu'o'o, and it seems to be settling there as well. Over the last week, there have been a few earthquakes building up, right? But this is really zoomed in to, we're at 70 earthquakes per day as a high over the last week. And if you look at the depth time plot, it's a little bit more clear that there are no real big pulses. Right? You see there's like little flare-up of clusters here and there, but none of the big pulses we've seen before that start up and last days and days and days. And earthquake map we've seen already. The cross section we're familiar with. So I'll keep it moving here. We've seen tilt, and right here, for example, is our more recent earthquakes over the last week compared to the earthquakes we had during that event, during the eruption itself right here, and the buildup to it all through here with all those intrusions. Just really quite a bit. As you can see in earthquakes per day over the last month, and a little bit earthquakes per week here as well. And it's not going to pick up in earthquakes per month since we're averaging in the same month of the eruption here as well. Our GPS on the USGS website is still not updated, so we cannot look at that. However, as a bonus this week, we'll try to jump in to see something a little different. we'll come to the Nevada Geodetic Laboratory GPS networks map. This is another site. This is not quite as good as the one we use normally, but we are going to just make do with what we can today from the Nevada Geodetic Laboratory. So the thing with this is that many of these signals are showing the full life of the station. So Uekahuna, for example, is going back to the 1990s. And on that scale, you really can't tell much of what's happening in the last week or month at all. So some of the stations are really not useful in this format, but some of them are. And I'll try to pull out what I can to share with you guys. So this is Devil's Throat, which is that Upper East Rift connector area. And so this is going back to just before 2018. Okay. And what we can see here, just to kind of talk through what these plots look like. Once again, we have three components. This upper one is an east-west. The middle one is a north-south. And the bottom one is an up and down. Right? And what they have is final orbits in blue. So that's the data that's been all corrected and it's all good. It's not going to be changed. And the ones in pink, magenta, those are the ones based on what they call the rapid orbits. So those are the ones still subject to correction as they refine the orbit of the satellite over the Earth that's taking these measurements. And so if the satellite's slightly further away, that changes the measurement of how far the ground is, obviously. And that can change the accuracy of the data here. Right, so that's where this comes from. And so, as usual, what I want to just point out is to start off with this up-down component. And so here it is, all our pink clustered on this side over here. And really the range of it, you can see, is that it's not really shooting up anymore. It reached a peak of upward movement a few months ago. And what we're seeing now mirrors what we saw just before the eruption as well. So not a whole lot of buildup happening in the Middle East Rift. Or I'm sorry, in the upper East Rift. It's actually now an open pathway to the Middle East Rift where we're seeing that accumulation occur instead. So Maunaloa here, this is going back to just before 2018 as well. And it has the effects of the recent intrusions as well. So you can see, for example, here, this big step down in the data was one of those recent intrusions. And what you can see here is that within the pink, which can still have corrections, so can't always believe the scatter here, it does appear that there was some recent movement that was a little faster that has clustered now more recently and is stabilizing, but maybe is still moving a little bit in that Middle East Rift zone. Hard to tell when we have the USGS telling us that their GPS instruments are basically winding down to almost nothing. And so up-down movement, you can see there it is still on an upward rising trend at Maunaloa. And so swelling still a bit. If we go to the MMAU, which is just south of the rift zone, maybe it helps me to show you the map. Right, so where have we been? That's the Devil's Throat station right there, where there's no inflation in the Middle East Rift. We just looked at Maunaloa, which is right here in a bend with a rift. And next we'll look at this one, MMAU, MMAU right here, which is on a track of the rift itself. So that one, you can see, this is the up component here. Jumped up, there's a little gap, more clustered, but looks like it maybe is still rising on the preliminary data here. If you look at northward movement, likewise, big jump and starting to cluster. Maybe it's slowing down, but just recently, if so. An eastward component is really moving to the west, clustering a little more in that direction there. So keep going down to what we can. One of our better stations is this one, the KERZ. That's not that one, maybe this right here, KERZ. Because this station was only installed fairly recently, in 2024, and back in 2023 actually. So our data is actually less than a year. So here, for once, we actually have close to a 1-year plot, similar to what we had before. So on that station, look at our upward component. We went up really fast, slow down, it's still moving. Probably some noise in this right in here. But you can see there's a little bit less clustering than some of the other plots. The north-south component, there is that big jump with the recent eruption. And now that looks like it's slowing down. That's the signal we expect to see. It was moving, and now it's clustering almost the same data point as time goes on. So that looks a little more stable on the north component there. But on the east-west component, you can see it's clustering a little, but still maybe moving a bit, right? All this suggesting that that Middle East rift is still settling, and we're still seeing the after effects of that eruption. Continuing on to NPOC, North Pu'u'o Crater. This one is one of the ones that has this problem of being an older station. We're going back to 2007 here. So we have to squint our eyes into this very tiny plot of data over here. And there's not much we can really tell. It looked like we were going northeast. So this is the east, and maybe it's sagging back a little bit here. And we're going to the north, and maybe we're sagging back a little bit, but really hard to tell with that really zoomed in thing. And we're coming up, but maybe we're sagging back down a little bit right in here. And really, really hard to tell. Right there, right? Just a slight hint of that coming downwards here on the right. But if we look at the south flank, just south of Pu'u'o, and let me show you the map once again. So we were just looking at Pu'u'o. Now let's look at the flank just south of there. This is a thing that opens and closes to see how much can actually move in this area. So MP3R, and most important there is a north-south component. And it's moving to the south, and it does not look like it's stabilized or clustering. In fact, it looks like it's still trucking, still moving pretty fast to the south there. So this is perhaps an indication of a longer-term consequence. We don't see that so much on the up-down. There's a lot of scatter in here, but this shows you like how much noise there might actually be, right? Compared to what a normal range of noise might be. You get more. But still, you'd like to see what happens with this and how this is going to clean up and how much of this is actually going to be clustering here ultimately. So all preliminary, but this is the best we have. And so that's the south flank. To go just a couple more, we've kind of worked our way down. We'll go to, let's see, maybe this one over here. Where is it? Over here, maybe. That's R391. We'll go to that one maybe next, but this one here, RKAR. So these two will be the next two we see, right? So from Pu'u'o, we're going to go past and look to see how far our effects down the rift. So RKAR, that first one. So a lot of noise, but there's a hint of an upward signal here, but this one I believe a little less. And a lot of scatter in the north-south as well. Hard to tell what's really going on there. But really, the up and down is what I'd be most telling. So it doesn't seem like it's quite as big an effect there, at least right now. And we'll wait to see what the final data shows us. And even further to the east, it's even less effect. Not really any change in the recent pink zone here. So that's using this Nevada Geodetic Lab GPS map, just to fill in a little bit of our data gap that we are having going on here. So that is it for our monitoring and our Kilauea update for the most part. I will pass it off to Dane and Lou to take us through our community corner and onwards.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Yeah, a lot going on up there. And yeah, we'll get Lou on here and talk a little bit about what's going on in the community. All right. Hey, Lou.
Hey, good evening. How's it going?
All right. So you got a little bit of community corner to take us through?
I do. I'm just looking up top, and looks like Carrie's going to go for it with me tonight. Hang on, Carrie. All right. Yes, we have a lot happening this week. You can see the pictures. Let me get it up here on the screen. There we go. That is part of the past, or there's some pictures from the past outreach programs that we've done, from the science fair to the civil defense prep fairs. And that's where we're headed this weekend on Saturday, September 28th from 10 to 2. We will be there with a booth set up. So if you are in Waimea, come check us out. There's going to be presentations going on all day, so you can enjoy the presentations that are happening, visit the booth, stop by, see Dane and Phil, ask them some questions, take some pictures, Put them up on Hawaii Tracker. Here's the presentations that are going on up there. The all hazards emergency planning, the tsunami preparedness. Our friend Cindy Preller at the Pacific Tsunami Museum, she'll have a booth there. Also, Ohana giveaways at that table. Volcanoes and earthquakes. The last event we went to, Deputy Scientist in Charge Dr. David Phillips spoke. I'm not sure if he's speaking again, but it was good last time. I assume it'd be the same around. All hazards, home protection, preparation. Important. We have the huge storm that's happening in Florida right now, as well as we get our own here. That's a great program that goes on. That is Dennis Huang from the Hawaii Sea Grant program. 2024 hurricane season. That is, so the Weather Service is going to do that one. How to be Firewise. That is Elizabeth Prickett. That was a good one. That is huge because that is Waimea all the way to Waikoloa. It's fire zone, and then Hawaiian Electric will round it up with the safety power shutoff. It's kind of a good combination with those two. If you live up there, those are important to watch to prepare for fire season. So that's where we'll be on Saturday. Check us out there.
There'll also be food there. So
yes,
for anybody that comes and checks out enough booths and participates, there'll be food for you there, and lots of other stuff.
Do we know what food trucks are heading up?
It's a bento.
It's a bento.
I think from Earl's, I think is the name of the place.
All right on.
Apparently they have some size to them, I was told.
Oh yeah, we've discovered that at the June event when you brought me an 11-pound burrito, right?
Right. We'll also be live streaming at that event. So
that's right.
Check us out watch our YouTube and Facebook. We'll try and live stream those presentations, and maybe, just maybe, if the stars align, it'll be streamed to Civil Defense's Facebook as well.
We're crossing our fingers on this one, right? We'll get it. Yeah. We'll get it. I was saying that our friends HACA, the Hawaii Animal Kuleana Alliance, will be up there. It's an animal search and rescue. They have a booth that's going to have some fun stuff. They have emergency bucket for pets giveaway, kids games and prize wheel. And if you are interested in learning how to make a harness for one of your animals during an emergency, you need to get out, stop by. They'll teach you how to do that. Just wanted to point out some of the things that are going on at the event. There's a lot. It's a fun one. In the park, there's our friend Ranger Dean at the and everything we pretty much know is under construction at the park. Go low, go slow up there. No eruption viewing, no view possible, no glow. Watch out for the roads. There's all kinds of things happening. Today, Dane's favorite goose is Nene Awareness Day. And the park had this on their site. These are pictures that Anna took here when we were up there. And yes, apparently 90% of the people that go to the park look for Nene. That's what they spend their time doing. I thought
that was going to be a graph of the red being how many Nenes are populated at the Waimea golf course. Or Waikoloa golf. Sorry, Waikoloa Village.
No, you're right. And I had this conversation with a friend today about the Nene and how hard it is to find at the park. But you and I talk about all the time. You want to see a Nene, you go to the golf course.
Third hole Waimea or Waikoloa Village, and you'll find a lot of them.
You will. Here's some trenching that's going on up at the park. Just a picture, national park photo. This should be done today, and with things cleared up, but we're not sure. Everything is tentative to weather. The overflow parking that's next to the visitor center should be done today, but you never know. There is plenty of parking in other places, all the way up to Lake Kahuna. You can park there. You can park at the steaming vents. There is parking around there. And this Saturday, September 28th, is a free day. Entrance is free at all fee-charging national parks. This event that they're having up there this Saturday at 8:45 a.m., if you attend, you get a free pass to any national park. So if you are visiting here and you want to attend this, maybe you can go home and get a pass for yourself there. Be sure to bring a hat, rain gear, day pack, snack, water. Gloves and tools are provided. So meet Paul and Jane Field at the Kilauea Visitor Center and help up at the park. Our newsletter is coming out at the beginning of the month. If you have not subscribed, Dane, can you throw that across the screen for me? I think we have it, the banner somewhere in there. There we go. Or you can scan the QR code and get signed up for our newsletter. That will be out the first month. It'll highlight some of what we did in September, and what we have lined up for October. So check it out. And that takes us to Dane, who has a video for us.
Yeah, the last little bit of Community Corner is the blessing, I guess you want to call it, of the construction.
Yeah, it was the Four Corners blessing.
32. Yeah. Go ahead and show a little bit of a video here that was done by Jen from County Recovery Team. There we go. It was a long time in the making, this.
I just want to say what an incredible day this is for our community.
Yes.
The road to recovery, it begins with the roads, and our communities worked very hard with the help of a lot of great people that have been involved in the county supporting this recovery. So many people putting their love and energy into restoring and healing our community today.
It's more than just opening a road, though. I think for a lot of people, this provides a lot of spiritual and emotional restoration. It's been a very, very long journey, but today we get to celebrate. Today marks a very significant milestone in our ability to recover and move forward as a community.
So I just wanted to say how important this is to reopen, because we've been waiting for like 6 years, and we deserve to go back to our puhiki and our home base down the road.
This is a culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people and a lot of partners for several years, and it takes a village, and I think that is also representative of the community today. Everyone has been involved. There's been lots and lots of public input, lots and lots of work on engineering and contracting, and we're just really excited that today is finally here and we're off and running.
Breaking grounds and moving forward on restoring Highway 137 gives us a renewed sense of hope that we are well on our way to recovery.
I just want to say, with my ancestors, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, it's going to be for all of us in the future.
This is just one piece of the larger recovery puzzle. We still have the restoration of Pohoiki, the installation of water lines, and then all of the work to support building up our community so that we can thrive once again.
I know she did a great job on that video. I did go to that, and it was everything in that video. It was a great ceremony. Really was. A lot of people, I want to say over 100 people showed up there, and thanks for grabbing that video, Dane. Audio, Dane.
Yep. So yeah, it was a great cut there, and you can see that they've already pushed through a little bit of the road there.
Yeah.
And I hear they've made a good amount of progress on that. So we'll see how that develops. It's a lot of stuff to do before that road will be open. So we'll keep an eye on that. And that brings us into our thank yous, I believe. I want to make sure to thank everybody that tuned in today. We rely on viewers like you, the likes, the subscriptions, the shares. I know all the YouTubers say it, but it really does help with the algorithms on the back end. So we appreciate that, sharing it out there, commenting, all of that. But we also wanted to shout out some of our donators that we had. We had one come through on donor box.
$50 from Skagit Ed on our donor box, hveri.org/donate.
Yeah, awesome. So go ahead, and if you do want to make a donation, we do take super chats, but we encourage people to make donations through hveri.org/donate. These are tax deductible donations because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. And with that, we'd like to thank also the Kilauea Recovery Grants and the Puna Strong Grants from the County of Hawaii, with the assistance of the Hawaii Community Foundation. Their support has really helped keep this program as well as our other programs going.
That's it. Thank you very much to all of you who have donated to us today and in the past. Like Dane said, hveri.org/donate. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Thank you, everybody, for all your support.
All right. Thanks, Lou. And I think with that, we will get into some questions and answers. Let's get Phil back out here. All right. See you later. All right. We're back. Hey, Phil, I think we really only got one question here. So if you want to take that on, we can get into that.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. I don't have an answer, but let's talk about it.
Bill asked, during 2018 eruption, there was a lot of great work and video and data captured by drones. I think some from the university. Did the success of that lead to any upgrades in the drone program?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. I will speak from memory from the presentations USGS has given on drones. There was one in particular that was done in Volcano Awareness Month. I want to say it might be 3 years ago now. But in short, Bill, yes, there have been some upgrades. Essentially, what happened at that point was the USGS had to scramble, and the university already had the drones set up in a collaborative agreement with USGS, and so that was their easiest path to get drone teams without having a drone team of their own, and that kind of bridged the gap at the start of the eruption when they really didn't have any support yet, which came from the mainland when their own drone teams got sent over. So that's kind of how it played out in 2018. And since then, the USGS has trained many of the staff that work here in drone operations as well. So they do have their own drone teams locally based now that they can deploy. I'm not sure the details anymore of that. The last I heard was, I want to say, like I said, a couple years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. We have seen them take the drones here and fly them and dip them into that lake of water after 2018 and take samples, I want to say 3 times. We always a long trip, right? They had to fly down like probably half mile down into the crater, scoop that giant column of water through all that steam and fume and fly it all the way out of the hole as well. So that was pretty groundbreaking, I would say. And that's the latest I've heard, right? As far as drone teams, I think it has to be the right kind of situation for the drone team to really be the best tool to deploy. It's something in their toolkit like everything else, along with the helicopters and the satellites and the webcams, right? You know, webcams are pretty unbeatable for a lot of stuff, right? Now that they have them really optimized as far as they're not stopping transmitting all the time. They're pretty reliable, right? As far as their operation now, they have dozens of them across the island now. So yeah, the drone can only stay in the air for so long, but you'd imagine if it was a situation where you were concerned about something, you would put the drone in the air. And so I'm sure that in their response, they probably considered whether there was a appropriate use for drones there. And yeah, I don't know if we've seen any drone footage yet. Have we, Dane?
I don't think so. I think it's all from the helicopter that I've seen. USGS, it's more to note that inside the national park, drones are illegal to operate. You have to have special permission to do so from the National Park Service. USGS obtains that, but really nobody else is. So they kind of have a monopoly on the drone footage inside the park at all times. Outside of the park, there is some things that are happening. We've heard some rumors around Civil Air Patrol trying to get a drone program off the ground. They have it off the ground already. So yeah, there's some movement, and that's happened since 2018 and was inspired by 2018. So there is movement inside the official and on the outside as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. You know, we've that's the official recommendation. Anyone who's a civilian that wants to participate in any future drone responses to an eruption, join a civil air patrol, and they require very little prerequisites. They'll train you on all kinds of stuff. You know, even with get your license and all of that.
Right.
So they're going to be at the fair this weekend also, as they worked on the last one, I believe. Yeah. Maybe it'll be this weekend. They were the last one, and in any case, that's a good crew to hook up with. Civil Air Patrol.
I should know that they're coming or not on Saturday, but it escapes me right now on the top of the head.
That's something we'd like to do more in the future with getting more detailed information for them. Yeah, it's just there's been so much going on nonstop, right? I was trying to count here. We've had 8 eruptions since 2018 already, right? It's been 6 years. And really, the first one came in 2020, right? So there were 2 years without it. We've had 8 eruptions in 4 years. We've been busy with a lot of stuff going on, and especially recently with 2 in the last 3 months. Yeah, so 4 months. Hard to keep track to.
All right, thank you, Phil. And I think for the answer, and I think that rounds out all the questions. I can double check real quick.
Good one from Yvonne. Yeah, Yvonne's got a good point there, right? With the eruption being declared over, which is something we saw actually. So can you get it up there? Or?
Yeah. I got it. Give me 5 seconds, and I will have it up there.
All right. So the question is, I know there are not a lot of signals showing any activity at the eruption site, so it's declared over. Why did they declare it over so early these days when it used to be paused for weeks when Maunaloa or pool erupted? What determines an eruption definitely being POW? Yes, that's a great question. As far as we've heard officially, everything is still paused until a 3-month window, right? That was the whole thing after 2018. We had to wait 3 months for the lava to cool and make sure it wasn't going to reactivate. And then when it did do so in September of 2018, that reset the clock. We had to wait 3 months from then, right? So it's not just a matter of time, but also location. If it's in a different place within 3 months, then it's a different eruption also. So there's kind of that component. There's all these tricky rules about when I declare things over. Sometimes they've been over. Yeah, it gets tricky. So the difference being that after the first phase of this eruption occurred back on September 15th, was it? Overnight, they said an eruption happened, it's over. And right then I thought, well, okay, maybe this phase is over, but we'll see, right? And so it turned out there were 3 more phases to come. And now they're once again saying it's over. And it may well be over. Usually after that a large phase like that, lava stops coming out of those same fissures in the ground, but it doesn't mean there won't be something else that happens in a month that happens somewhere a little distance away, right? Maybe it's a new eruption, maybe it's a reactivation. It depends how close it is and how soon it is. And we have to just wait and see. But it's sure taking its time to recharge at this point. Some eruptions in the past, even before the East Rift eruption was over, you'd see the summit reinflating a lot more already, right? And so we're not seeing it quite that much now. So this suggests to me that it'll take its time a little longer. But you never know. Last week we said that the eruption looked like it had a little bit more time. As we were broadcasting, it turned out it had 12 hours more time. It was a little bit more time, but it turned out that right after we stopped and looked at the tilt meter, it started reinflating and stopped deflating, and it just took it 12 hours from then to actually wind up what it was doing. So you never know; it can change pretty quickly. Yeah, it's a good point, and I think for a common person, it's always been kind of confusing. This whole it's within 3 months, it's paused or it's over. So I don't know if they're just trying to bridge the gap there and just say what people see as obvious. There's no lava coming out, so it's over, and then another phase can start and it can be over. And maybe it's better that they're not so picky about it.
For like what the county was doing in 2018, when the mayor would say, "Oh, unless the USGS can guarantee that the eruption's over, we're going to keep these protocols in place, these emergency proclamations in place," which was now it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
over. But can you guarantee?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But also no emergency proclamation, not necessary because it was in a remote backcountry part of the park, right?
Yeah.
So, and they're dealing with just the National Park Service. They're probably not having to deal with the county really much at all, right? I'm sure they're telling the civil defense what's going on.
I did ask at civil defense, like, for this type of eruption, Middle East rift in the park, what really happens, like in terms of communication? It's like mostly top level communication. So USGS head talking to the administrator of civil defense daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and then they can escalate from there in case something happens. But otherwise, civil defense does things outside the park.
Yeah, and so the effect outside the park is I have appreciated this, and I hope this becomes a habit that they do note that there is an eruption happening, and the impact outside the park will be the gas.
Yep.
So they have noted gas impacts, and that's something that I was kind of poking at them a while ago. Like, every eruption has an impact. It might only be the gas, but the gas is almost always an impact because there's so much released at the beginning of every eruption. It's bound to go affect somebody somewhere. All right, so that's our questions. So appreciate that. We just have a little bit more to round out the update this week. We'll start with Kilauea once again. So let me get this lined up here. But to start off, coming back to Kilauea, I will play you the video that I couldn't get loaded before. And let's get this on the stage here. Here it is. So this is the most recent video, aerial video, on the morning of the 20th as eruption was ending. So there's still a little bit of lava coming out way up here, but largely it stopped flowing in the channel. You see a little bit of fume where it's advancing, maybe over here, and on that edge over there. But there is a fuming fissure, the last little pad of active erupting lava right there in the middle, with some more fuming vents there, and further up rift. See some glow further up there, but bubble bursts. So you can see the lava is a little more sluggish. It's not rushing as a rapids over that cliff anymore. It's oozing out and bursting in bigger bubbles. Maybe a little stickier there. Another little vent. Building a little bit more of a spatter rim around the vent itself. Here's some Pahoe flows with some chunks in them flowing. Some more bursts and degassing there. You can see how close the forest can still survive behind there. And here, you can see a little steaming crack. And clearly there's still gas coming out then, but that stuff's not getting measured down, or people are on the road. So that's the last little bit of video. And to kind of finish off Kilauea here, we'll go to Volcano Watch, which this week is understanding magma storage and migration in the East Rift. And so it turns out, the long and short of this is some happy fortuitous news. So this is today written by HVO geophysicist Ninfa Bennington and colleagues from ETH Zurich, Federica Lanza and Alicia Ronacher. And what they're showing here is a network of seismic nodes, these little red triangles all over the place, that they actually deployed in June of this year, late June 2024. The seismologists from Zurich and HVO deployed 115 seismic nodes across all of the East Rift Zone before even the first intrusion occurred up at Maunaloa, which happened in July, and before the second intrusion happened in August, and then eruption in September. And so they caught all of that. They're still out there recording. They're going to keep them recording for the rest of this month. and pick them up next month. They actually had to pick up 4 of them already because they were afraid they were going to get covered by lava. So we got those 4 already, but all the rest of these are going to pick up. And these detected the movement of energy from the earthquake sites through the East Rift Zone to all these different areas that these are picking up. And the idea is to use this to create a 3-dimensional image of the rift zone as it's changing over time and as storage areas are building up. So we've been talking about this Makapui storage area and the Maunaloa storage areas, and maybe we'll actually see images of those as they come into their own first Maunaloa swelling, and then opening the path to Makapui, and Makapui swelling, and then eventually opening a path to erupt. That entire sequence might have been caught here, kind of in 3D. So we'll see what comes out of this. They don't have an image yet. It takes a lot of processing. That'll be what we talk about next here, but to start, for example, they can look between this station and this station and see the differences between them and see how the earthquakes affect different areas, right? Not just the earthquakes, but they also use the ambient seismic noise of the oceans that kind of comes from the shore. It kind of creates a vibration that should be the same everywhere. And they can use those little differences to also image where magma is being stored in the rift. And maybe that's the primary way that they're doing this, in fact. So we're lucky that they're still there. We'll get the data in a bit. Here's what data between 2 different stations looks like. What you can see is the change in velocity, right? So here is 0 is no change. That's the line of no change. And so you have some little variations that happen as the ground changes. And largely it's this thought that as pressure builds, let's say in a magma in a rift zone, and then it starts squeezing against it, and there's little cracks in the side, those little cracks are getting squeezed further and further closed. That lack of gap and airspace in the ground makes the seismic waves travel faster through the ground. So that kind of thing is what you detect as an increase building velocity increase here. And then once you have an eruption actually happen, now you're making new cracks in new airspace. And now the energy has to go a lot slower through the ground. So it all comes crashing down here. Right? So that's what you're saying here is that increase prior to eruption, decrease following eruption, and then eruption's over. So you're no longer making new cracks. And now you're starting to see it begin to recover here a bit, right? So this is interesting too. A little bit of a signal is telling you that maybe the magma is refilling, repressurizing a little bit, maybe not a whole lot, but up until this point of back in August, right? This is not catching the whole eruption here. So it's just the intrusion there. So that's what this Volcano Watch this week is, and that's awesome. And we'll have to wait to hear that result into the future. How long do we have to wait? It seems like a lot of work. Yeah, it is a lot of work if you consider that there's 115 nodes here. And you have to measure the difference between every pair of them. That's a lot of work. You're going to use something like computers. In fact, the USGS is using supercomputers for this. And so there's an article released this week as well. Get to the top here. USGS supercomputers help assess volcanic hazards in support of community resilience. And this features a lot of the work done here in Hawaii, but also other observatories across the country. So let's see what to highlight here. And they are showing a picture, recent eruption. So what they're saying is that in the end, the USGS has there's all kinds of different ways of doing computing work, but there's always a role for these large high performance computing systems or supercomputers. The USGS has 3 of them. They're named Denali, Tallgrass, and Hovenweep. And I'll pause a second here to let our ASL interpreters figure out you know, how this all works. I don't know what this even means. Denali, I do know, but you know, tall grass and hub and weep. Someone can educate me on that. That'd be great. So they have these, and they're able to split a large task into chunks, compute all the chunks in parallel, which means at the same time on different processors. And at the end, they combine everything back together to get the full result. So that's what makes it, that's one of the ways that things can be made faster, as well as using machine learning and AI to look at your data as well. And so the USGS is actually using a combination of both there. They're using machine learning and AI, and they're running their models on our supercomputers, all of it. They do note that they had their first supercomputer named Yeti back in 2013. And because of that long-running program now, they have all kinds of applications for these supercomputers. So, for example, here is a reference to Dr. Roger Denlinger from Cascades, who came to Hawaii and deployed all these seismic nodes over the volcano a couple of summers ago. Remember that? They also came through and used the large truck and pounded the ground and picked up all the signals that way. And likewise, or just like we're talking about, happened over the last few months here with our intrusions and eruption, trying to image what the rift zone looked like before that, and the entire summit area as well. So that might require millions of computer hours, so they can figure out how all that energy scatters through the volcano. And so they actually are using tall grass and hub and weep to do the calculations for that summer-long survey of seismic nodes that was deployed. So no results yet, but they're imaging more than 200 million seismic waveforms to produce three-dimensional images of the magma system. This is physically impossible for any group of scientists to do by hand. So you see really what they're using this for here.
And apparently Hub and Weep is a national monument.
Thank you.
In Utah.
And tall grass? What's going on there? Maybe it's just a big field of grass.
I only got so much in me.
We'll leave it to the audience to comment in the chat here what's going on with this. All right, so that's one example, imaging Kilauea, which is what they'll do with the data set we just talked about, which we just got. But since we're talking about supercomputers and what they can do, they're going to come back to Maunaloa in 2022, where they were using this, what they call lava 2D simulation from Fisher 3, right? And 5 days of flow, here is a projection that they ran on their supercomputer and the actual result that came out. And so they didn't release this after the fact because they were still experimenting. But here you can see how that could be really useful to have that kind of model. And the faster it can run, the better, obviously. So you can see here Hannah Dietrich saying how beneficial that actually is. And
yeah, so just sorry, interrupt. The tall grass, I think, is the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve, also an NPS. So these are all national park things.
There you go. All right. All right. So there's a national park tie-in. That makes sense. All right. So does it say which? Here we go. They ran it. Well, right now they're optimizing Lava 2D to be run on Hub and Weep, which will be used the next time there are forecasts needed in Hawaii or the Cascades. Most of the ones done were produced on Yeti. There you go. So you see here there's a whole world of modeling happening behind the scenes here at the mainland support. So we also have seen, and this is more so when Kilauea was putting out this ash clouds in 2018, this ash 3D model, much more important for the Aleutian Islands, Alaska, because a lot more of those ash eruptions. But for example, when they're running a forecast of where will the ash disperse from an eruption from, say, what is that, St. Helens, then there you go. That's another use for that supercomputer. Yeah, so that kind of thing gets produced routinely every time there's a big ash cloud produced. So they also have modeling they use for lahars and landslides, which are high-speed floods of water, mud, and rocks. And that software is called DClaw. This must be a fun exercise for interpreters. Sorry, you guys, about that. And here is what one of those looks like. This is from Mount Rainier, modeling lahar scenarios from possible landslides and where would those hazards go. So there you see the head wall of the Tahoma Glacier, 2 basins down here, the Nisqually and the Puyallup River, and where those outflows might go. And so really useful stuff to have. And there is an image of Denali that's housed at the Earth Resources Observation and Science, or EROS Center in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So there you go. You can get started using Denali. Yeah, we can contact HPC at usgs.gov there if you have something serious to contact them about. All right, so that's the bonus article that kind of goes along with Volcano Watch this week. And with that, we'll just wrap up with Maunaloa, which will not take us very long. Over the last week, we've seen the daily variations, a little increase in the tilt here in recent days, but nothing really major. Our scale is really zoomed in here, only 1 microradian on each end of the zero. Our earthquakes have been pretty slow. Did get one more deep one earlier in the week, but not a whole lot to really talk about there. There's a last month of tilt, which really picked up that big earthquake, that 4-pointer that preceded the eruption, and otherwise is showing us long-term slow inflation of the volcano. That's right in line with its expected pattern there. Here's depth over time for the last month, so our most recent deep earthquake, and this is the most exotic stuff happening. It's more of a curiosity than anything, or what is happening with these deep earthquakes. They're a little shallower than some of the deeper clusters we've seen in the past, but anyways, that's the only interesting thing. But the rates are still really low overall. Here they are, earthquakes per day. At most, it's been 5 over the last month. And over the last week, it's been 4 within that summit area, so not a whole lot to speak of there. And here it is over the last year. This was the last swarm of deep events, which is what we're kind of wondering. This might be the most exciting thing we get in the near future. But we're not even getting that. We're still down here at the low end of less than 20 earthquakes per week, which over the long term, for the last 5 years, registers as some of the lowest earthquakes per month in the last 5 years. So that's all on Maunaloa, really. And that's the update for this week. So I'll pass it back to you, Dane, and what you have to wrap us up. Any other discussion to be had? Can't hear you.
I think most of the discussion at this point is around the naming conventions of the supercomputers, and talking about what those are. So yeah, I don't see any questions in here for you right now. Let me make sure. Oh, I do have one. I have 2 actually. Linda asks, what is happening with the other area is on video. It's smoking in many different places. Sorry if this has been answered.
No, that's a good question. So it's pretty common for, let me see if I can get that video back up here again. It's pretty common for eruption sites to continue fuming for a long time after the eruption is actually over, right? Dane, what was your experience down in Leilani? How long were those fissures?
It's still steaming.
Still now, 6 years later?
Oh, yeah. You get the dew point at the right spot, and there'll be a steaming mess like all of them. I expect that to continue too. They're very weather dependent, those, but the steam, yeah, just from down in the water table coming up and making its way through that vent to the surface.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can steam or degas for a while. I mean, it sounds like the gas emissions are very, very, very low. They can't measure them anymore. So often the last lava that's liquid there is kind of stuck in that vent underground, and it'll kind of harden up and maybe plug the vent in some cases. But it's all still very hot. There's still water all around in the area in the ground that can certainly vaporize, and yeah, you might see steaming every time it rains at least.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yep. And then the other question was from Marin, who asks about the volcano watch. There are two distinct clumps of earthquakes near the edge of the poly. At least that's what it looks like. Where are those and what causes them?
That was sorry, was that this week?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to take it down. That was a misclick.
Clumps of earthquakes near the edge of the poly on the volcano watch.
Yeah. The volcano watch, it had the two graphs, or the two that had the map and then the graph. And
okay.
Then it looks like those right there is, I think, what she's mentioning.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So this the thing to realize here is this is an image from. Okay, here they got earthquakes from between July and September. So it's catching the July intrusion into Maunaloa, which I believe was the one that happened right here at the bend. I think that first one was the one that caused that first adjustment in the south flank in that first pulse right there. And then the second pulse also had a similar south flank cluster adjustment. And I forget, maybe this one was a 4.7 with aftershocks. So maybe that's,
yeah.
I'll have to go back and look.
I think it's definitely one of the bigger quakes, and then all of the aftershocks centered around it.
Yeah.
Like each of those. So yeah, good question.
Yeah. But those are the 2 points. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Interesting to see that pattern, right? And the fact that there was none in between, which shows that between here and here, the magmas just found a pathway without having to do a whole lot of work. And there it went.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good, insightful question there.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that gets us through everything this week. In terms of questions, we will be back next week, Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. That is our normal time. We go live. Unless something happens like last week and we end up going live midweek to cover something along the lines of a eruption that happens. We don't expect that maybe right now, but you never know with the Kilauea and the curveballs that can be thrown.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, we'll stay vigilant as always. And if something comes up in between, we will jump in. But otherwise, we'll be back at our regular time next week, Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaiian time. And anything else you guys want to add?
Saturday in Waimea.
Saturday.
If you're around, come to the Kīlauea Town Hall, and we'll be there with, I think there's 35 partners attending. So if you have questions about emergency response, about the fire plans, about earthquakes, they're going to have a bunch of people there to talk to.
Yeah, and if you want to come check us out, we're not over at the north side, west side that often. So yeah, by all means, come say hello. We'd love to chat.
Yep.
So yeah, from us here at the nonprofit HVERI, Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, I'm Philip Ong, Dane DuPont. Mahalo to our ASL interpreters, Dano and Carrie Kaufman. And until next week, aloha everyone.